Hello, and welcome to another episode of our Powering Progress podcast, where we look at the different ways in which we can really impact the journeys, the careers of underrepresented talent. And you know that in this, we speak to a whole range of guests with experience, leadership, insights to help. So, really looking forward to today's episode, where we have a really special guest who personally has also helped to power my own progress in my career. So she knows a thing or two about the keys to making an impact and difference. So really love to welcome Jane Sunley, who has an background as an operational leader in the hospitality industry. She transitioned into consulting before founding Purple Cubed, and it's an award-winning culture and technology business which she led for 21 years before management buyout. She then co-founded Hendrick Hyde, and that's a practical results-driven consultancy helping businesses become great workplaces. So Jane has founded 3 successful businesses. She's an experienced trustee and non-executive director, strong, strategic, down-to-earth facilitator. She's also published a number of books which I've read, which I would definitely recommend, and is a visiting fellow at 2 UK universities. She's a trustee of the Oxford Cultural Collective and has been recognised as a Shine Ambassador of the Year and a Woman of the Year. So really privileged to have Jane today talk. Jane, welcome. How are you?
My pleasure. I'm great. Thank you. Nice to see you, Lonray, as always.
Is always a pleasure. So we always start this podcast with the same question, and really interested to get your insight on this. What does powering progress of underrepresented talent mean to you?
I'm going to come at it from the business perspective first. It means maximizing the opportunities. So, for the underrepresented talent, of course, it's about accelerating change and, the importance of support. But businesses just need to realize that, a more diverse a business is, the more successful it's going to be. There are loads of stats out there. I'm not going to quote any, but, I know from when I've been on boards with a lot of a certain type of person, and then we get some diversity in, it just changes the dynamics. I've seen it in front of my eyes. So it just makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. And it's really interesting what you say as well, because yeah, you can read all the stats or read the books or hear it, but you've kind of been there, done it, you've seen it, you felt the shift, you felt the change. What does it kind of feel like being there and seeing a change in an organization and the impact it has?
Well, it's great, but it's hard actually because I mean I've been around quite a while, and my one of my first charitable board appointments was, I mean, I was the only woman there. Never mind, no people of color, nobody who wasn't a kind of middle-aged white man, and that's fine. Everybody's got something to offer. But I remember speaking up about things that I thought were important, and everybody would just ignore me. And so actually it's tough to make it work, but once you break through, and of course it's better these days, but once you break through and you get a bit more diversity going on, then of course it's brilliant, and the magic starts to happen then, and change happens, and people suddenly start seeing things with a different perspective. And you cannot be in this world today without seeing multiple perspectives, and you can't know that unless you talk to people. So
Yeah, so true. I was running a session yesterday actually, and it was on just talking. And it's strange sometimes. People think, "Oh, how are
yeah.
we just going to talk?" And the minute people start opening up and sharing their different experiences, the time flies, and people are like, "Wow, I've learned something. I've seen something." And it may seem obvious sometimes, but you actually, as you say, you do need to talk to understand and see those different perspectives.
And ask good questions. You don't know what you don't know, and you
Mm.
should absolutely never assume. And I used to just see these people making assumptions. Every individual is different. Never mind, every group is different. Every individual is different. And certainly in companies, you've got to know the people who are in your company. You can't just generalize with the stats going, oh, well, that, people talk about different generations. And, yeah, we kind of know roughly what a Gen Z wants, but not every Gen Z might want exactly the same thing. So ask the questions, talk to
Yeah.
people, listen, and do something with it.
Yeah, definitely, and I'm sure you've seen that from you've founded, you've led successful organizations, you've hired people, you've developed people. How much has that hiring and developing of diverse talent played a part in the success of your business?
immeasurable. In fact, I mean, I suppose by taking the approach that I'm going to look for your strengths and bring that out of you, and I'm going to look for your potential, and I'm going to help you to be the best you can be, if you like. That's all I ever did with people. And actually, loads of them are out there. You know, there's 14 people who work for me who started their own businesses who've all been really successful. Also, there are people who've gone on to work in different businesses and risen up the brand ranks, you know, and even the people that I thought, gosh, I wish you'd done that when you worked with me. Maybe it was just they sort of learnt the technique and then got the confidence and went and did it somewhere else. But most of them stayed for years and years. I couldn't get rid of them. I used to go now and
Too much.
spread your feet to do something else now. But you know, I'm so proud that they're all doing what they're doing. It's brilliant, and that's just by just being interested in them. Actually, it's not that hard.
Yeah,
Just
I can see why they want to stay under your wing for longer than they need, maybe.
yeah, but I'm not like their mother. I always say I'm not. I am your boss, you know. At the end of the day.
Yeah, but how there's because a thing that's really important is you've talked about asking questions and understanding people. I know sometimes in organizations there's maybe a profile already set in mind of who's the right fit or who's the right person. And what were you able to do to kind of take people who's maybe not the what you would say this is the profile, this is a model, and give them that opportunity?
Well, I always did everything based on values. So we were very clear about what our values as a business were. And this is not about cloning people saying you know you must be X, Y, and Z, but you have to relate to the values of a business. So one of our values was freedom. So that was about being yourself, you know, expressing yourself, but also, you know, trying things sometimes. But you know, we gave them an environment where they could feel that it would be okay to come and say, I don't really know how to do this, or I've no idea what I'm doing. And we go, yeah, fine, great, we're here to support you. So it's freedom within a framework kind of thing, you know. So it's just about having these values that people can relate to. And I also think when people are job seeking, and I do quite a lot of mentoring, and I always say, as you know, and I always say to people, go and find the environment where your personal values are going to be fulfilled. Because if you go into an environment where, you know, they do something that is way against your value set, you're just not going to be happy there. You're not going to survive there. It's not going to work. So I always look for attitude and the value fit thing, actually.
Yeah, definitely. And I can attest to that. I remember coming to you many years ago, times when I was maybe struggling in the environment, and just the reflections that we did around kind of what's important and what do I value. And yeah, I think that's a really important lesson for anyone who's trying to navigate their career, to understand what it is you value, what is important. Are you getting at in the environment you're in, and then what changes? Because I know for me personally, that really made a massive impact for me. And it's not necessarily that the environment is bad, but it might not be the place for you where you can flourish.
You know, I get quite a lot of people saying I want to work for X big corporate company, but one of their values is being able to use their initiative. Well, some corporate companies you can do that, but a lot you're expected to just kind of adhere to the way things are done around here and not go off. So that's immensely frustrating, and also gets people into trouble because they think, oh, but I know a better way. And like, you're not paid to know a better way, you know. And unfortunately, some businesses are still like that. But I'm going to send you a link to, I've got a free, it'll always be free, values elicitation tool. I think you probably did it years ago. I'll send you a link, and you know, you can put it in underneath your podcast, because if you don't really know what your own personal values are, and I know it's easy to say, I know myself, but a lot of people are kind of confused by the priority order. It will work, it will draw that out in quite a process online. So I think if you go there armed with your values, you can, at least before you even get there, look on the website and get a sense of, you know, is this a fit for me, or is this just not anything that I should be doing? Because honestly, it just never works when there's a value clash. It just doesn't.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And one of the things we really want people to understand is kind of what's in their power to do. Because, of course, can't control everything. There might be people listening who are struggling in their careers or in an environment where they're not thriving. But are there things you can influence? Are there things that you can use to build yourself that's going to help you and go forward? And I think that's really key.
Yeah, I think so. And also not thinking it's on you. So
Mm.
many people come with their confidence destroyed or at least damaged. And they, oh, well, it must be me. It's almost like the whole, sort of gaslighting thing in a way. It's almost like you believe you're not very good. And that's a terrible thing because then how are you going to then go forward and get the next big job when you're feeling, oh, I'm a bit of a failure and I didn't really thrive there? And businesses do have an obligation there to accept that if people aren't the right fit, have that conversation, and if you can support them to get there, great. But if they're in the wrong place, just face up to that and handle it in the correct way.
Yeah,
you
definitely.
know I've let people go very early on, actually, where there's a couple of times where I sort of ignored the gut and thought I'll go with what everybody thinks, and that's fine. And they've come and just been a mismatch, and we just had to sit down and go, look, these are things that are really important here, and can you do them or not? Because if this isn't what you want, kind of there's no point you being here. And a couple of people have gone, yeah, it's not really for me, and that's fine. Fine. That's absolutely okay. We're not all for everybody. I'm not for everybody. You're not for everybody. It's just the way it is.
Yeah, and it links, I think, with what you were talking about earlier around having people freedom. You talked about freedom and whether that's freedom to decide how to do things or not being scared to make a mistake or ask for help. That real sense of psychological safety, and research shows that's key for team for performance, and the freedom even to say, I'm going to give this a try in this role. It's maybe not the right place for me, but maybe that's kind of part of my journey and exploration to where I really need to be, rather than it's not worked, I'm a failure. So I'm hearing this real piece of identity and like knowing yourself as well is really important.
Okay. Yeah, and just, yeah, kind of being able to grasp hold of fate in a way. Actually, I'm a great believer in fate, that I think nothing's not for a reason. So if you go somewhere, it's a disaster, you will always learn something. If you have a terrible manager, you always learn how not to do it. So sometimes there's a reason for stuff, and you just have to find the positive rather than dwelling on the negative, really.
Yeah, definitely. Talking of learning and from your experience as a leader, as a founder, also you would have brought in leaders to lead other people as well. What's been your key learning of your experience when it comes to leadership and underrepresented talent?
I think it's really important, and not many companies do this, I will tell you, that companies actually work out how we lead here, because you want people to do things in an individual style, but it's a bit like the values thing. You have to have some consistency of approach, because you'll have seen people, they go work somewhere, they thrive really well in that department, they go and work for somebody else and they absolutely bomb because of the style. But if you work that out, so I think the whole leadership thing is about knowing what it means,
Mm.
and also that every leader from the very top do actually role model the things that you are saying you'll do. I hate box ticking, right? And there's loads of box ticking around still. And you've got to call that out, because I feel really sorry for HR, actually, because sometimes they make culture and values and stuff an HR thing, and it's not. Your culture is the DNA of who you are. So everybody from the CEO to the part-time person should all be aware of what it means to be here. And they do this kind of thing where it becomes an HR thing, and then they try and stamp it all over the business, but the people at the top aren't doing it. And as soon as they don't role model that, we've lost it. I mean, it
Yeah.
just joke, doesn't it? And it's a bit like a lot of things. It's a bit like sustainability and etc. etc. I think I told you a story before about my nephew, who's very, very neurodiverse and a genius, and went and took a job from a company that was specifically recruiting the neurodiverse. And this is his first job, bless him, and he's not got a lot of confidence because, he's not like everyone else. And that's good. He's got his strengths. But then he got there and got horribly bullied because they hadn't prepared the colleagues for how to deal with a really neurodiverse person. That's a box ticking. I mean, and that's a very large public sector organisation. So it's not good enough, is it, really?
Yeah, yeah, and again, this is one of the reasons why we want to shine a light around things like this, because the impact it has. You talk example of your nephew, and it's so many different things might come out how they feel. being neurodivergent, how others might be seeing them. Maybe there's a lack of education or insight. They're not kind of having the conversations that you talk about to even ask him, okay, how are you gonna kind of what's helpful for you to be at best? What support might you need? How can we work best together? And there's just assumptions made, and then you're kind of left on your own, and we want to
And
break
what are
that.
your current limitations? So
Yeah.
what it is was he wasn't confident picking up a phone. He didn't want to answer, like a desk phone. He'd never seen a desk phone. It was a desk phone now. And they said, you've got to answer this phone. He said, I don't feel comfortable answering the phone. And instead of saying, okay, we'll leave that, let's do something else. He's brilliant at all the processing and all the admin and everything else. Do something else. And one day you might feel confident. Maybe we can help you with that. But no, that he said, well, as part of your job, you've got to answer the phone. So just stuff like that is crazy. And it's taken him a long time to recover. But anyway, he's in a nice job now where they
Yeah.
absolutely love his genius. So it's good.
Good to hear. Good to hear. Yeah, we did a study on neurodiversity, a really big one in the tech space in particular. And there's so many things that, and one of the things as well to think about is it doesn't just help one set of people. It actually helps everyone. Some of the things that we should be doing would help your nephew, but would also help the colleague sitting next to them as well, because it
Absolutely.
comes back to that environment where we're respecting the individual, understanding the different needs, the different adjustments
Yeah.
that people need. But yeah, really good that he's found the right place.
Well, it is good. And that's a nice story. But there must be millions of
Yeah,
stories.
exactly.
And he's got a really supportive family and we all, help it all respect. If you don't have that, it's nigh on impossible to get your confidence back up. It's frightening, really.
Yeah.
That employees have a massive responsibility
Mm.
to lift and boost, not squash.
Yeah.
We still haven't got that, unfortunately, but there are lots of good ones out there. So you
Yeah.
just
And
find them.
And it goes to that right culture. And I know you've written a book about finding the right culture. So it'd be great to hear more around that because, yeah, as we're saying, it's so important, particularly when we're talking about those from underrepresented groups, that they do find the right culture. But yeah, how do they find it? What does it look like? What's the impact? Yeah, what are some of the things in your book that kind of might help?
Research the values thing, but find people who work there and go and talk to them about what's it like to work there. I mean, you can go on, like Glassdoor and Indeed, and you can read the reviews. But what tends to happen there is you get the either really good ones or the really bad ones. So I always think, if I go into any business and maybe there's someone on reception, and I always say to them, oh, while I'm waiting to go in or whatever, oh, is this a nice place to work? And they go, oh yes, it's lovely, but body language, and you go, oh well, if you don't look at them, it's that lovely. Well, and then they kind of dish the dirt, and it's really funny what people will tell you. I mean, you can just do your homework a little bit. And with social media, somebody always knows somebody. It's like there's no 7 degrees of separation anymore, is there? It's far less than that. You always know someone who knows someone who will just give you the inside track. And I think you've just got to do that kind of, bit of sleuthing,
Mm.
go and find out what it's really like, because you can't tell from the website, you can't really tell from the annual report. You need to actual get lived experience, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely. What would you say are some of the signs that an employer is really serious about kind of supporting underrepresented talent?
Um, Go on the careers site. If it is a list of vacancies with no explanation of what they can do for you, or a list of vacancies that say you must be XYZ ABC, that turns me right off. Whereas if it's, you go on the career site and it goes, if you come and work with us, we can give you all these things. The sort of people who fit in with our values are like this, but we're open to everybody. Come and talk to us. Let's discuss it. So it's just the tone of the career site for a start, because they should be wooing you as a prospective candidate, not the other way around. Honestly, I do believe that. And I know it's tough out there sometimes, but they want the best, then they have to be the best too as an employer. So there's that bit. I think just looking at that, and also ask some good questions in the interview about why your interviewer worked there, and how long do they work there, and what do they like about the business. And I mean, people sometimes don't like that. Well, then they're not right sort of people, are they? Because if someone started to ask me that, I'd think it'd really make me think, and I'd think, okay, yeah, I'm going to tell you why I'm here.
Yeah,
It's important, really.
yeah.
you know. So the best person I ever in terms of fit, the person I employed came to our interview. I said, what are you doing here? He said, really resonate with your values. And I said, okay, tell me how you'd fit in with them. And he said, well, first, can you tell me how you came up with them? And I thought, yeah, all right then, I will.
A question.
And of course, gave him the job. And it was an interesting fit because he'd been offered
Mm.
double the salary in a corporate, obviously a smallish business, and he'd been offered double the salary in a corporate business, but he chose to come to us because of the fit.
Wow. That's fascinating. Like, and it just shows sometimes clearly that person's been thinking a lot about not only your organization and what you offer, but also themselves. Because I'm assuming the answer that you would give, if it didn't align with themselves, then they'll be like, maybe I should take the double pay elsewhere, for example, or maybe I should go somewhere else. So it is very much around, and I would say that's not just about preparing, that's about looking after yourself,
Yeah.
if you know what I mean.
But he was also from an
Yeah.
underrepresented group and knew from the conversation that we would look after him and we would fight for him if necessary.
Yeah.
Whereas you don't know that if you go into somewhere a bit soulless and nameless. And, I need to know, people need to know that if a client's awful to someone, you back your person, not your client. And that's quite a big thing, particularly in small business.
Yeah.
I worked in recruitment for a bit. And, we used to get some terrible requests back in the day from employers. And, I was just having none of it. But they wanted you to go, oh, yeah, okay, we'll break the rules and give you want. I mean, people are interesting. So, yeah, you've got to be able to back your person and to the hilt, even if that means turning the business down. You've got to be brave and have morals and principles, really.
Yeah. Again, it goes back to those values and showing that you care for those individuals, that they're important, and not just a statistic.
It's not, if you've got an integrity as a value, you've got to have integrity. You can't just say you've got integrity.
Yeah. How would this help someone who maybe they're in an organization already, not saying everything's terrible for them, they may be doing well in some respects, but that progression there's a barrier for them. They may be hitting a glass sort of ceiling.
Yeah.
How can they use some of what you shared to help them power the progress
I think
to where they want to get to?
first of all, look for allies and mentors, ideally within the organization, if you can find that. Because if you've got a champion who knows the place and can help you, and you've got someone to talk these things through with, it massively helps when you then decide to speak up. I mean, you must speak up, but you must speak up in the right way. Having thought about it, and thought about not just what's wrong, but what would I actually like it to be like? Because, people hate people going with problems and no solutions. Whereas if you go and say, can I have this conversation? I'd really like to give you some feedback. Is that okay? Most people should go, yeah, all right then. And then say, look, I have noticed these things are happening and I've been thinking about, possible solutions. Shall we talk about that? Do you want me to share them? And, if they go, no, I'm not interested, get on with it, then there's your answer. If they say, yeah, I'd like to hear what you've got to say, it's very difficult. You can't go in there with a fait accompli and go, if you don't do this, and you don't do this, and you don't do this, you've just got to go, look, there are options here, and these things would work. And in my experience as a person in this group, this would really work for me. Maybe it will help others. So you do have to, you can't go in there kind of banging your fist. It's like, do you get more from the sugar or the sweet, the sugar or the sour? You get more from the sweet. So go in there not particularly sweet, but go in there, with a mature, well thought out attitude, and that's how change happens. But you must speak up. Just do it that way. That's all.
Yeah, I've actually just come from a session with underrepresented talent, and it is all around that, how you can kind of advocate for yourself and how important that is. Because if you don't, a lot of the time you won't have any other representation for yourself, which again speaks to the sponsorship, because the sponsorship, the idea is you've got someone else in a position of authority and power representing you. But we know a lot of underrepresented talent don't have that sponsorship. So who is standing up for you? So you
Exactly.
have to do it for yourself. Otherwise, you're going to be perceived in a different way through no fault of your own. Maybe it's bias or assumption, but you kind of need to take that stand. And as you say, do it in the right way. Present yourself in a way that you feel is going to be best. But you've got to be that first voice, haven't you?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and find role models. If it's not in your business, find role models in similar situations where you can use them as an example, because it's still there, this whole barrier thing, and it is absolutely crazy in 2025 that we're still having these
I
conversations
know.
but
I know.
such is life.
It is what it is, isn't
We're
it?
all, you're chipping away, I'm chipping, there'll be loads of other people chipping away. We will get there, but
Exactly.
yeah.
Just keeping it going. Would you say it's the same whether it's someone trying to get up to maybe a new manager role or middle manager, as it is someone who's trying to get into a senior leadership role? Do those conversations change? Is there anything different if this is someone wanting to get into a position of senior leadership?
I think the principles are the same of get your facts right, do your homework, prepare well, have a rational argument, and then just look at the situation. So it will be a different conversation,
Mm,
but the principles are the same, aren't they?
mm.
Just to plan well and use examples. And, if you've got to throw data at them, throw data at them, it's,
Yeah,
but also to understand the person you have in the
yeah.
conversation with, the people you have in the conversation with, and how they tick. We're great observers, all of us actually, and your gut feel is a good thing. And you sometimes can think, I'll get the measure of this person. And once you kind of, obviously not making any assumptions, but once you understand how they work,
Mm,
you can use that, can't you, to kind of have your rational argument with them. What is it that really gets them excited? What
yeah.
is it that impresses them? Find those things. I know people think, well, why should I? Because you might get a better result. That's why.
Mm,
It's not the way it should be, but we're in the real world here, and
yeah.
you've got to use all the tools in your toolbox, really.
Yeah, so it's definitely really about building the relationship, which is key. And
Yeah.
interesting what you say that no matter what the level is, the same principles apply. Because I'd say sometimes people feel there's some sort of magic that needs to be done to get into those higher rooms, the boardrooms, the senior levels. Um, but a big element is, are you building that relationship with who's in the room?
Yeah.
Because ultimately someone has to open the door for you, don't
Yeah.
they?
Yeah. And it's like anybody else, I suppose. Look, bias still exists. Yes. There is a lack of role models. Yes. There are limited opportunities sometimes. Yes. Sometimes cultures aren't right. Sometimes people are stereotyped, all the rest of it. But on the whole, people are open to, if you're going to do a good job for their business or their whatever their organization happens to be, and you step up and you volunteer for stuff and you go, oh, let me take that project on, prove yourself. I know you shouldn't have to, but I know, women have been doing it for years. Somebody once said to me, when I was in the hotel business, in this business, as a woman, you've got to work twice as hard as the man. It's for anybody to think you've done the work. Now, I mean, maybe that's the same now, maybe it's not, I don't know. But if you're in that situation where you're underrepresented, unfortunately, there will be occasions
Mm,
where you've just got to show what you can do, really, because people need to believe it. And of course it shouldn't matter, but
mm,
sometimes you just have to do it.
mm. On the other side of that, what can the senior leaders, the gatekeepers, what should they be doing to make that journey for those who are underrepresented easier to progress?
Well, they all need to go on one of your courses first to understand what bias is. And a lot of people aren't aware they're doing it. I mean, conscious bias, people just have these deep rooted things from wherever it comes from, and they don't even realize.
Mm,
I think it's about, for senior leaders, being super aware
yeah.
that it's not just because you know someone says you've got to do it, because you've got to believe, and it is true
Mm,
that diversity is a great thing, and there's a whole load of talent. I mean, you and I both know about the brokerage, don't we? Which is
mm,
a charity that I co-founded about, oh my God, 25, might be even 30 years ago now, which was all about getting inner city kids into city jobs. because, people who were living in Islington, Bethnal Green, Hackney, very rarely went through. It was a bit of a glass wall, actually. Very rarely went to that. You've got Bishopsgate with all those banks and all those swanky businesses. And then on the outskirts, you've got all these poorer neighbourhoods with people who were perfectly talented and capable, but just hadn't even got the confidence to walk down the road and apply for the job because they knew they just wouldn't get it. And that's why the brokerage started. And it's still there now. I'm very proud of that. Although I have nothing to do with it now. But, years and years and years ago, that we were getting these people into jobs, and we thought it'd be as easy as just introducing them. But actually, we then realised we had to get people job ready to be able to kind of fit in terms of just behaviour and, back in the day, clothing and all these things. And, people say, well, why should we? Well, do you want to earn 400,000 a year in a job in the city? Or don't you? And, we got people into most amazing jobs in dealing rooms. And because some of the skills they'd honed on the streets were some of the skills that work really, really well in the city. And that was I know that was a long time ago, but that was a real bridge of a gap. And I have seen it, therefore, that people who you'd think would have no hope of getting those jobs back then, who got the jobs, were so successful and all ended up funding the charity, actually. It's such a nice story because they chuck all these massive, every time they get a bonus, they chuck a big donation back at the charity. Oh, at least they used to. I hope they still do. So once you see it, that's it. I mean, those are stories I always tell because that is proof that this works.
Yeah, definitely. And it just shows how much leaders have to open their eyes to the talent that is out there.
Yeah.
And I've had conversations with leaders, organizations, where people have talked about, well, they're not polished enough, they're not ready enough. But I've had to challenge them and say, well, what does polish really mean? What do you mean by that? You're seeing polish through your eyes, but actually, can you put on a different lens and actually see where they're polished in other areas, and who you think's polished, they maybe need polishing elsewhere. So even the language that we're using to describe people and the boxes we're putting people in really needs to change. Because then we get stories like you shared with the brokerage.
But it needs people, these senior leaders need people like them to challenge it, not just all of the underrepresented. Because, when you see the, the actors' pay thing in Hollywood, my kid works out there. And, only when the male actors stood up and said, I'm not doing this movie unless you pay her what you pay me, did things really change. Yeah. And again, it shouldn't be like that, but it is. So, you need to find those role models within those, more white mainstream groups who are going to stand up and go, come on, we're doing this because it makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. And this is why even conversations like this can't just be geared towards those who are navigating their careers. It's got to be those who can kind of have an impact because of their seniority or level of power to listen and say, actually, I'm the one holding the key here. Let me open the door and do something.
Yeah, it's more important if they all don't the people who are holding the keys, as you say, if they don't change, it's just really hard. However good you are, it's just really hard, and people don't need to go through that. It's just senseless, really senseless.
Yeah, definitely. So Jamie, we'll come to close. So much we could go on for longer, but I really just want us to kind of just use some of this time to kind of just reflect. Hopefully those listening can reflect and take some nuggets from this, whether you are navigating your career or whether you're a senior leader who really wants to do more, knows you can do more. Hopefully this reaches out to people to do something. So really want to thank you for your insights and what you shared. One more thing we'd love to kind of ask you, more on a personal side, personally, what does Powering Progress look like for you, coming months, years? What does that look like?
Oh, it's quite interesting actually, because well, I'm my top value is achievement, so I always have to feel that I'm pursuing something, and then eventually I get it. It's got to be quite hard though, because if I got it really easily, it would be boring. So I'm actually writing a novel at the moment. So, and I think I have an agent, so that's really exciting. So my power and progress is probably in a completely different direction. Because a business book is one thing, writing a novel is a whole different kettle of fish. But it is actually about a couple of underrepresented people, and a well represented person, and the dynamic between that friendship. So let's see.
Oh, well, look forward to it.
Experience going in there.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. Let us know when it's out. And yeah, do call out what were some of the books you have, because as I said, I've read them, they're great. But yeah, do share what are the last books and see if we can find
The
them.
fourth book I wrote, it's called The People Formula, and that is one for employers. And it's 12 steps really to being a great place to work. And they're not really academic, my books. They are super practical stuff that everybody should be doing, but they're not, which is why I wrote them. And then before that, I wrote one. My second book was about how to be a great employee, and it's actually called "It's Never Okay to Kiss the Interviewer." Terrible title, but the publisher liked it, and there is a story about why it's called that in the book. But it was really about, and it's a long time since I wrote it, so there will be things that you would challenge now. But actually, it's a kind of how to work out where you want to work, what you want to do, how to get the job, how to be happy when you get there, and how to move on stylishly, really. So it's a kind of work cycle, but loads of practical tips and stuff like that.
Right, fantastic.
For anybody who wants one.
There you go. So do check it out. And yeah, as you heard from Jane, I'm sure you'll find many more tips and insights. So Jane, really do want to thank you for your time. It's been a real pleasure as always, and I'm sure those listening will take a lot from it. So I look forward to connecting with you soon, and also connecting with everyone who's listening again soon. So keep powering your progress. Take care. Speak soon.